One of the many questions asked on Channukah, about Channukah, is the question of why is there very little to no mention of Channukah in the Mishnah? If you look through the Mishnayos and Shas, you find little to no mention of Channukah. And you think, well, of course, Channukah happened after the Mishnah. No, but Channukah happened before the Mishnah. So therefore, how come the only mention is parenthetical? It talks about you have to read the Torah on Channukah in Maseches Megillah. And in the Babas, it talks about laws of damages, that if you're riding with a camel with flax, you better be extra careful when you ride on Channukah, because you're lighting Channukah candles outside. You don't want the flax to catch fire when the camel is walking by. So there is mention, so clearly it existed. So the question is, but why don't we have like some details, some regular Mishnayos on Channukah like we have by Purim and we have by all the other mitzvahs? So we'll try a couple of different approaches. Number one, we'll begin with the historical approach of Rav Ruvain Margolis. He says, historically speaking, this happened not that far after the Bar Kokhba rebellion. And the government, the non-Jewish governments, are very sensitive to any type of Jewish actions, and they were afraid by doing A, B, or C, it might appear like they're going to revolt. And for Channukah, the story of the Rabbi Miyabiyatim, the small Jews rebelling, beating out the mighty Syrian Greek army, so therefore Rabbi didn't want to start up, when he codified the Mishnah, he didn't want to start up with the outside authorities, Romans, or whoever it was at that time, and therefore, this like they point out, this like all the other nationalistic mitzvahs are left out also. Talis, Tefillin, Mashiach, very little mention about the Mashiach, because again, for the same reason, he didn't want to get the Goyim all worked up. So that's one approach. A2 is based on the Rambam and Perish HaMishnayos. He asks explicitly, why no mention of Talis and Tefillin in the Mishnah? You won't find it in all the Shas, you won't find any mention of Talis and Tefillin. So he writes, because Hadvarim Yiduim, because they are well known. You do them daily, and therefore Rabbi felt it wasn't necessary to put something in the Mishnah that everyone knew about. You wear Talis and Tefillin every day, therefore nothing to worry about. So too, based on this Rambam, some suggest Channukah just happened. It was the most recent holiday. It's the most recent miracle occurrence, and it happened not far before the Mishnah was written. So therefore, there was no need to put it into the Mishnah, because it was something that was well known. That's based on the Rambam and Perish HaMishnayos. A3, the Chasim Sofer. The Chasim Sofer writes, we know we have a pasuk we're going to read in a couple of weeks at the end of the book of Bereshis, Parashas Vayechi, will Yasser Shevet Mi Yehuda, that the kingship comes from Sheva Yehuda. And in fact, the Ramban points out that even though they were Chasidei Elyon, they were great people, and without them, Torah would have been forgotten. Nevertheless, they violated, on their level, a terrible thing. They took on the kingship. Number one is they weren't from Sheva Yehuda, and worse, they were Kohanim. The Chashmonim were Kohanim, and there's a special prohibition for a Kohen. We don't want to mix them. We don't want to mix the kahuna with the malchus. Separation of church and state, you're familiar with that. That's a separate discussion. So therefore, Rabbi who came from, he was a descendant, they claim, also of Sheva Yehuda. So therefore, not to embarrass the Chashmonaim by putting them, they violated a terrible sin, he didn't want to put them in the Mishnayos in order to avoid the busha, avoid the embarrassment of putting them in, because they did such a terrible thing. However, this point is a point of contention. Is it true the Chashmonaim did a terrible thing? You mean they shouldn't have taken on the kingship? If you look in the Rambam, Maimonides, he seems to have a totally different view than Nachmanides. Nachmanides is the first one who came very hard on the Chashmonaim. He said they were destroyed, the family was wiped out, and anyone who says they're from the family either are a bunch of liars or they were slaves who worked for them, but they don't exist anymore. The Rambam gives us a totally different picture. He calls this time period when Jewish rule was restored, when Israel was run by Jews, a Jewish government, he calls it a Yeshua, a great thing, a salvation. And for 200 plus years, whatever the amount was, he says that was a good thing. So we have a major machlokas, the Rambam and the Ramban, whether the Chashmonam, when they took, everyone agrees they took over, was it a good thing they took over? The Ramban, they were punished for it. They were destroyed. According to the Rambam, it was a good thing. And it could be based on their positions elsewhere regarding appointing a king. There's a discussion in the Gemara in Sanhedrin based on a pasuk at the end of Sefer Devarim, Som Tasim Alav Melech. There's a mitzvah to appoint a king. So what is the nature of that mitzvah? Is it a mitzvah like Shabbos, like kosher, like tefillin, that I have to do it, I have no choice? Is appointing a king mandatory, or is it optional? If I want to appoint a king, this is the way things have to work. So it seems to be a machlokas in the Gemara. From the beginning of the pasuk, it seems it's mandatory, Som Tasim Alav Melech. But from the end of the pasuk, it seems to be if you want to do it, then we allow. It's not something you have to do, but it's only optional. So the Rambam paskins, it's mandatory. One of the three things you have to do when you enter the land of Israel: appoint a king, destroy Amalek, and build a temple. So the Rambam's consistent with his view. He holds you have to appoint a king. So ideally, you look from someone from Sheva Yehuda. But let's say someone's not capable from Sheva Yehuda, but Makam Sheinish, when you can't find someone from Sheva Yehuda, you got to find somewhere else. That's how the Rambam views it. That it might not have been the ideal situation because you want someone from Sheva Yehuda, but since there was no one around, there was nothing wrong. In fact, it was a good thing that the Kohanim took over. And the Ramban says it's optional. So if it's optional, don't do it. If the halach is to appoint a king from Sheva Yehuda, so if you can't do it, so then don't do it. Don't appoint anyone else. So that's the way the Chazon Sofer learns. He finds fault with the Chashmonaim, like the Ramban, and hence he left out of the Mishnah to avoid the busha, the embarrassment. A4 is the Rav Soloveitchik. We want to give an answer according to the Rambam. Maimonides says it was a good thing. So if it's a good thing, we need another answer. Or we want an additional answer of how do you explain why, according to the Rambam, it was left out if they did the right thing. So the Rav Soloveitchik has a beautiful explanation. He points out an apparent contradiction in two Gemaras. Number one is the Gemara in Moed Katan. If someone sees a Sefer Torah burning, what's the halacha? Or I should say, if you rip, right, and you rip a Sefer Torah, you see it burning. So what do you have to do? So the Gemara says you have to rip Kriya twice. You have to rip Kriya, rip your garment. We know usually you rip Kriya when you lose a loved one. There's another halacha when the Sefer Torah is burning, you also have to rip Kriya. It says you rip twice. Why twice? Why can't once do the trick? Once for the parchment burning, once for the letters. Two separate Kriyas. However, the problem is there's another Gemara elsewhere, a famous story with Hanina ben Trajan, who was giving up his life al Kiddush Hashem, and they were torturing him, and they were burning him up, and they took a Sefer Torah, the Goyim, the Romans, and they were torturing him, and they rolled him up in a Sefer Torah, and they were stuffing up wool in to make him burn and suffer more. So, and the student said to him, "What do you see, Rabbi?" So Rav Hanina ben Trajan said, "I see the Sefer Torah burning, but the osios, the letters, going to heaven." So what's going on here? I thought the osios are burnt. Which one is it? Do the osios go to heaven? Do the letters go up to heaven? Why are we ripping Kriya twice? So Rav Soloveitchik explained, we find different terminology. When it came to the Romans, we find the lashon of churban, like destruction, churban habayis. And when it comes to the Greeks, we find tuma, timu kol hashmanim. It was a much more spiritual way. And there's a famous kasha of the Ramban. We have a principle, ein adam osir davar she'eno shalo. That let's say someone comes in to worship idols in my house, and they worship the dining room table or the Apple computer. There's a lot to worship, and you could pick your medicine. Does that become usher as avodah zarah now? Someone starts to worship my dining room table, my kitchen table, so it's avodah zarah, I can't use it anymore? No. The principle is you can't prohibit something which doesn't belong to you. Let me point out, this is only by avodah zarah. Someone comes into your kitchen and trafes up your pot, they are trafed, they can do that. Because one is because by avodah zarah it's b'machshava, so therefore that doesn't affect something. It's only with your mind. So something with your mind, you can't do it on someone else's property. But if they physically come in and do something, you have a problem. So they point out that so the Ramban asked, how could the Greeks have defiled the temple? It wasn't their temple. We say about the Greeks defiling the temple. How could they defile my temple? The Jews' temple doesn't belong to them. So the Baal HaMor explains that you're right, it wasn't the Yevanim, it was the Misyavnim. It was the assimilated Jews, the Hellenists. They came in, and the Greeks could do all they want. They could only do Churban. They could destroy anything they want, but they can't be Metameh because it doesn't belong to them. It was the assimilated Jews who came in and did all those things in the temple, and they defiled it. But, a Goyim can do a lot of things to us, but they can't. Sometimes a Jew can do even worse things, but the guy can't defile the temple, only a Jew can. And that's the Rav Salvation explains. That's the contradiction in the Gemara. The Gemara which says when you see a Sefer Torah burning, that's a Jew burning a Sefer Torah. A Jew has shaykhis to the Torah. He can burn not only the cloth, not only the parchment, but he could burn the letters. But a guy who has no connection to Torah, the most he could do, and the Gemara is with Chanan Mitzvot, it's talking about a Roman soldier burning him, so he could only burn the cloth. But a Jew who's burning a Sefer Torah, you have to rip Kriya twice. And that's where Salvation explained, you know why Channukah was left out of the Mishnayos? It was a busha to us. Because who defiled the temple? It was the Mitzvah, it was the Jews. And that's why Rabbi left it out of the Mishnah. We're not worried about the Chashmonayim per se. We're worried about the Jewish people as a whole, that we allowed that the temple being destroyed, and therefore that's why Rabbi left that out of the Mishnayos. A5. So we could suggest now a fifth shot, because the first four, the first one was a more historical explanation. The other one was about it was well known. Chasim Sofer was in the Ramban, and the Rav in the Rambam. But they're all answers explaining external things. In other words, they're saying Channukah should be in the Mishnah. The assumption of the first four answers are, it's a good question. Well, I'm going to say it's a good question also, but Channukah should be in the Mishnah, and we're giving reasons why it's not. I want to take the fifth explanation, which says that no, Rabbi specifically left it out of the Mishnah for a good reason, because the Gemara tells us in Yuma, Chav Chesam Beis, that it talks about it talks about that just like the morning is the end of night. When you wake up in the morning, night's over. And probably when you wake up, night's been over for a long time. But when you wake up at the end of night, it's morning. And it says, so too Purim was Sof Kol HaNisim. Purim was the end of all the miracles. Again, the way Rav Tzadok, others going to Gemara, means Purim. They asked, what about Channukah? What do you mean? Channukah came after Purim. So some warned Purim was the last of the Torah Shebiksav miracles. Purim made the cut. The 24 books of Tanakh, Purim made the cut. Chanu Chaf Channukah was going to be the 25th book, but we rested. It really means 25th of Kislev, but they say Derek Drush. It rested. It did not make the 24 books. So Channukah is the beginning of the Torah Shebaal Peh. That during this time period when the explosion of the oral law came about, and that's why even the Sugya in Shabbos, where we see the power of the Chachamim, of where do we know that comes in Channukah? Why is it brought down Heichen Sivana? We learn out the whole source of the power of the Chachamim in the Channukah Sugya. You couldn't find a better place to put it in, because Channukah is the beginning of the explosion of Torah Shebaal Peh. And in fact, that's what the Vilna Gaon and others explain the difference between Rachel and Leah. What's the difference between a Torah Shebaal Peh miracle and a Torah Shebiksav? Torah Shebiksav is everything, it's all in front of us. Basically, we open up the Chumash, the Navi is there, and we have to learn it. Torah Shebaal Peh that comes from our effort. That you go into a library, it's nice and quiet in there. You walk into a Beis HaMedrash, everyone's screaming at each other in a good way. The Melchamta Shel Torah, the war, you're trying to, that's crazy, that doesn't make any sense, and the whole Gemara is about machlokasim, about the disputes going back and forth. The Torah Shaveh is about the dynamic. Torah Shebiksav, that's it. It's a closed book. All we can do is try to understand it. The Torah Shebaal Peh is something that continues dynamic. We're constantly, every generation, for the Chacham to come along and come up with new explanations. So a Torah Shebeksav miracle means that's it. It's already set and fixed. The Torah Shebal Peh, and that's the difference between Rachel and Leah. That Leah, that basically that Leah was a gift, because basically he was working for Rachel, and then he tricked him, and then he had to work another. So he basically worked 14 years to get Rachel. Leah was a gift. That's a Torah Shebeksav. Basically, you get a gift, no effort. But Rachel, he worked 14 years for. Also, the difference between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. Bayis Rishon had everything in it. That was a gift. Bayis Sheni, we didn't have Nevuah anymore. We didn't have all the different things. They had to come from us. So Torah Shebal Peh signifies man's effort. We have to put into effort. And in fact, that's what they point out. The Ramah writes, even though we pass, you don't have to have a meal on Channukah, but to make it a Sudas Mitzvah, we have to do something. We have to talk Divrei Torah, sing Shiros v'Tishbachos. And even in Yeshiva, Chanukah is one Yantif that if you do nothing, Chanukah will come and go. What do? You go, you come back from work, you light your candles, and you go back to what you're doing. For Chanukah to be meaningful, it has to come from you. You have to actually be proactive. And that's the pshat. So why did Rabbi leave it out of the Mishnah? Specifically for this reason, because once you put it into print, it loses its dynamic. That's why today we can't argue on once it's in the Gemara, it's a closed book, and that's why Rabbi didn't want to put. We want to leave it Torah Shabbat, but the reason why it's written today is because we had no choice. But Rabbi specifically left Chanukah out of the Mishnah to signify the koach of Torah Shabbat. That's what Chanukah is all about. It's a yontiv of Torah Shabbat, and hence specifically left out of the Mishnah. Let's summarize. A1, historical Ruve Margolis, that right after Bar Kokhba rebellion. A2 is well known, so there was no need to put it in like Talis and Tefillin. A3, the Chaz and Sofer. We didn't want to embarrass the Chashmonim, who were Kohanim and took over the Malchus. A4, working with the Rambam, that it was a good thing they did, so why was it left out? Because it was the Misyavnim, that we defiled the temple. What an embarrassment, we left it out. And A5, no, it was left out intentionally. Because it's the koach of Torah, that's what Chanukah is all about. It's the yontiv where the explosion of Torah Shabbat began.